I'd like to welcome you to our brown bag for this semester. So far, we are going to be talking about Doceri today, and many of you probably already know what Doceri is. It's an interactive whiteboard app for your iPad. The gist of it is you install the Doceri server on your computer, and you install the Doceri client on your iPad, and now it actually works with Windows tablets as well. Android, it does not have a client for the Android yet, but Doceri is saying that is coming. What can you do with Doceri? You can annotate on any presentation. You can annotate on top of Firefox, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, including Prezi, which you see that I've got here. What it allows you to do is walk around your classroom. So if you've got your iPad in hand, you can show your students where you're talking about with a pointer. And you can also, some instructors hand their iPad off and allow their students to work problems in class without the fear of walking in front of everyone and taking a pen. And also it's a lot cheaper than a hardware version of an interactive whiteboard. I will say it doesn't have all of the features that a smart board would have, but some of those features, if you're not interested in using every one of the features of a smart board, a smart notebook, or Promethean, then Doceri may be right for you. What do you have to run Doceri? I'll go over this really quick before I introduce our speakers. You have to have an iPad, of course, will work, a Windows 8 tablet. The latest version of Doceri is version 2.0. The computer system requirements, if you have an Intel processor-based Macintosh with OS X, and also Snow Leopard, probably just go ahead and have the latest version of Java as well. And Windows machines, if you have Windows XP all the way up to Windows 7, then you're in luck. That should work. And also, if you don't have a computer, if all you have is an Apple TV in the classroom connected to a projector, then you could, of course, through AirPlay on your iPad, show your Doceri presentations as well. Okay? So I can say this, we've had a pilot going on. We had a pilot a few semesters back, and it was a small-scale pilot, and President Borsig saw Doceri, and he saw another program that we use called Air Server, which is very similar to an Apple TV. It's a program that's installed on your computer and allows your iPad to project to your computer. He saw both of those and said, I want a larger scale pilot, which we did. We did a survey of the people who were in the pilot, and we got some very positive reviews of Doceri. Air Server probably wasn't used as much. We didn't do as much training on it, but Doceri was probably more of our focus and had some really good results there. So what we did is I wanted to do a seminar today. Miss Melesia Henry approached me. She said, I like this program a lot. She said, I want to do a talk on this program, so can we get a seminar together? That's why we're here today. We have Miss Melesia Henry. She's from our nursing department. Mr. Thomas Haffey from the College of Business. And we also have Dr. Marty Brock, who is going to talk about Doceri from an administrative standpoint. So without further ado, we have Miss Melesia Henry.
Well, good morning. Thank you for coming out. Walk around a lot. Actually, that's another benefit of Doceri. You can use it as your remote control if you like to walk around the classroom, and you don't have to have a separate remote. So let me get into, you got my PowerPoint? Okay. While he's getting the PowerPoint up, but I do like it for that purpose. And our nursing students, sometimes they have some really long days with some really long classes requiring them to sit for long periods of time, and so it's easy to, I guess, check out after a while. So Doceri helps to engage them in the learning process, and we have a lot of things, a lot of hands-on. And I know that y'all know you want them to be familiar with what muscle to give the shot in, how to read a medicine label, know the parts of a syringe before you meet them in the hospital, right? Okay, so that's one of the things that I use it for. First, I'm going to show you how I use it when I'm teaching vital signs. I teach a lot of the skills. I teach all the dosage calculation and medication administration. So it's very helpful with all of those. So with vital signs, the neat thing about new nursing students and that I love about them, when we first get them, they really don't know anything except they want to be a nurse. So it gets as basic as they don't know the parts of the blood pressure cuff. So before we start letting them practice on the faculty and each other, it's important that we show them the different parts and teach them about it. It's as simplistic as that. So I'm going to enlarge this. Y'all can't see that I'm enlarging it, but you can enlarge Doceri by just spreading it like that. So it's easier for the students to see something when you pass it off to them and mark on it. And it's not quite so tiny. So I can activate my pen here. And you can select what color. Sometimes I'll let the students do that if I'm not in a terrible rush. And then you can have them, I'm going to say place an X on the cuff. So they would make an X. And I could show them the inflation bulb, have them circle it, have them circle the manometer or the gauge, and the air release valve, really tiny right there, and of course the tubing. And once I show them, I can go right up here real simply and erase all the strokes. And after I've shown them, then I could pass it off to them and get different ones to indicate different parts of the blood pressure cuff, and therefore getting them engaged. Okay.
So they also have to have their own Doceri, then you said they can circle it or?
No, what I would do, and I'm going to do that in just a minute, I'm going to show it by passing off to Jessica. I warned her, one of my fellow nursing faculty, I might engage her in this. I have no problem passing my iPad around. Now they actually, if they have Doceri and they connect to the computer, they can actually have on their iPad just what I have on mine, if they connect. But I have no problem with, I'll pass my iPad off to them and have them mark, and then the students can all see what they're marking because it shows up on the screen. I use it a lot with dosage calculation by letting them work problems. Okay, so we always have to teach them. Can you dim this just a little bit, Rick? The light up front. Can you dim the front lights just a little? We have to teach them the basics, and so just showing them how to read the gauge, and that you can only get even numbers when you take a blood pressure, and a lot of them don't realize that with a manual cuff. Now the automated ones, you get odd numbers. So we just have to show them that, the large increments are in tens, and the smaller numbers are worth 2. So we start very basic. So I've got a number here, and I believe I had over to the side. It's 100. Again, I can activate my pen. The only thing is that you have to activate your pen every time you change slides. If there's one thing I could give feedback on to the company, that would be it. Not to have to activate your pen every time you change slides, that it would stay activated. But I would show them that there's the number 100, and then here's their number 60. I've enlarged it so I couldn't see the numbers I had on my iPad. So they could see that. So then I can go to the next slide, and once I've shown them, and engage them. So once again, I'm going to actually go this time, and I'm going to get an era because it's a little finer. And I'm going to ask Jessica if she'll draw an era to 120 and 80.
Okay. This is my feedback about Doceri. It's just not for me. You see, I know where 120 is, but you see, it's a little difficult for me to maneuver exactly how I want it. There we go.
Okay.
I got the 80 good.
Yeah. And so again, I could go and erase strokes. Do any of y'all want to try marking on it? Okay.
So what bases that you have on your iPad? Yes. Not that.
Yes, ma'am. That is that. It's this.
You can make it bigger.
Right. I can make it bigger, therefore it's easier for them to see. You know, like those little small increments when we're teaching them, they're hard to see, but when I pass the iPad off to them, it's enlarged. So hopefully that helps y'all get the feel as well. And usually in the beginning, I get a few volunteers for students, you know, that don't mind. I'll ask them to raise their hand. And then after they get used to it, then I'll randomly select people. We also use it a lot with medication administration. I can have different muscles on here. I don't today, but I can have different pictures. And I can ask them to select a certain muscle or site, or which, you know, muscle would I give a certain medicine in, and ask them to circle the correct one. But again, before med administration, with our new students, it's the very basic. Teaching them to read labels, and y'all want them to be able to correctly read labels before they give you medicine, okay? So this goes along with prescription meds, labels they see in the hospital, and labels y'all might see just in over-the-counter meds that you go and buy at Walmart. So some of the key things on the medication labels would be finding the trade name. That's a manufacturer name. Okay, so that's what we all know as like Tylenol, Fiorol, Motrin, Aleve. Those are the trade names. So for this one, the trade name, got to get that pen again, is Cardizem. They have to learn the generic names. It's not the chemical name. It's a little less complex than chemical, but a little more complex than the trade name. And I would ask them to show me the generic name, which is that one right there. I could then ask them to show me what strength the tablet is, to find that. And that would be 30 milligrams, or they could show it to me right there. Then I could tell them to find how many tablets, or what form it comes in. And they could underline tablets, and then how many? 100. Once I've shown them, I usually have another slide, and then I'll pass it. Who would like to try? Somebody want to draw an arrow to, let's see, I might have to activate it. That would be my only feedback. Okay. Maybe because I'm doing it upside down. There we go. Okay. So just to the trade name, the name we would see would be that one right there. There you go. Okay, so again, it's just very easy, a lot easier to teach them when they have hands-on and they can actually see it. And as you see, I'm using it as a remote as well. And I could continue to pass it around, like I showed you, and have them, you know, draw a line and show me the number of tablets. Okay, and the strength. Then we might teach them, you know, we have to teach them the correct parts of the syringe before we start letting them give shots. So I could ask them to find the plunger, draw an arrow to it, the barrel, and then the needle. Okay. Go get a sip of water. And then our medicines come in many different containers, and just teaching them the difference in those. And these are just two, ampules and vials. And on this one, I'm going to use the pen, and I might just ask them to circle the ampule, just to see that they know the difference. And again, the fun thing is most of them know nothing. So we have to teach them how to open these ampules. You have to break their glass. You have to break that little neck off without them cutting themselves, hopefully. So a lot of times you can tell them, you can show them right there where they're supposed to break it at. Another thing. And you could ask them to find these parts. Equivalence. It's very good for that. You know, we have a lot of numbers that they have to remember, And we tell them they can't memorize their way through nursing school, but there are a couple of things they do have to commit to memory, several things. But then this engages them, and I would get a pen for this one instead of an arrow, and I would let them fill in the blanks. So 1 teaspoon is 5 milliliters, 1 cup, 240, half cup, 120, and 1 liter, my writing is not the best in the world, is 1,000 milliliters. So just another way to engage them. I could do the same thing with conversions. We teach them I and O, same thing. Now this is some of the math, not technically dosage calculation, but they have to learn. So after they've learned those conversions, then I could give a sample like this, ask them to add it up, and fill in the correct amount. And the conversions, that slide just works just the same as the one with the equivalents. Again, I would pass it around and let them fill in the appropriate number. And then doing the math. This is very important to them and y'all, that they can do the right math before they administer meds. But they only have 3 attempts each semester. They have to take a dosage calculation exam at the beginning of the semester. And usually it gets a little more complex and difficult each semester, and a new concept's introduced. They only have 3 attempts to make a 95 or above on that, or they are out of the program. So it's an extremely important concept, and they like to do a lot of practice problems in class. So Doceri has been great for that. That's probably where I have utilized it the most, is letting them work problems. So when we bring a problem up, I usually have just the problem there. We might talk about it a little bit, how much is ordered, look at the label, see what's available. Again, I can increase it. I can make sure that they're reading the label correctly and how many tablets that they would administer. Then, I usually, with the dosage calculation problems, I have a built-in, just plain blank slide behind it. So I go ahead and advance to that. I ask them to write down the information about how much they were supposed to give and how much is available, and then I pass it off and I'll let them work the problem. And I'll show you in just a minute, and I'll probably ask Jessica if she'll help me out here. So this is another example of a problem, and it makes them use their conversions as well. I'm going to bring in the rest of the slide with the medication label. And then I've got a blank slide. So they've got an order for a half a gram, and they've got available 250 milligrams per 5 milliliters. Jessica, do you mind?
No, I actually know the answer, so that's good. Y'all know the answer, though. Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and pass that off to Jessica. However you want to do it. You can show them however you work it. You got to get your pen. That's okay.
All right. Oops, sorry, now I did that.
That's okay.
Okay, I want the next slide. Right?
Yeah.
Help me out.
That's it.
Oh, that arrow.
That's okay.
Can I see the information again?
Uh-huh.
Then I'll hit my pen. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. So if the order is for 500 milligrams and it's 250 for 5, so I go to the next slide.
Oops, I went backwards on you.
I don't. My fingers are too big. You can't. Okay. For 5 mLs?
Mm-hmm, per 5. There you go. 10 mLs. And if I usually, I might have candy or something. Sorry, Jessica, I forgot it this morning. And a lot of them, that gets them engaged too. and maybe wanting to work the problems. Because if they'll volunteer and I pass them a pad off to them, then I usually give them, you know, Hershey's little miniature candy bars or something like that. And that just kind of facilitates their participation. They all love candy. So same thing with this one. This is one we're probably all familiar with. Ibuprofen, 600 milligrams, and each tablet has 200. So how many tablets would they give? Anybody want to use it? Do what? 3. There you go, 3. So I could advance it to that next slide, and I could use my pen, and I could write 3. Okay.
You know what else is neat about this? It forces you to pay attention. Because if she randomly passes that off to you to participate, and you're not paying attention, you're going to look pretty silly among the other students. So everyone, you know, you never know. She's going to make you do it, so you're more engaged, paying attention to that.
And actually, since Jessica said that, I had shared this story with Thomas and Rick. We actually had a student one semester that fell asleep in every single class. He's no longer with us in the program, but we had been given instructions to call him out. It was very distracting to the other students. They were complaining. And so I was teaching dosage calculation one day, and he was back there just, you know, sound asleep, and we had barely gotten started. And so I was walking around, and I headed back that way, and the students started grinning. And I think they were reading Miss Henry's mind, and he was asleep, and I just went, "Hey, work this problem for me." And he was like, what? You know, like Thomas said, probably like he was having a bad dream, but he realized, oh, it's not a dream. And it does keep them engaged, and, you know, they want to participate. And then if you want to, yeah, it's really neat.
Are you getting the pen to work?
Tap it right here.
Tap this one.
Since you've got it, go ahead and let's see.
Keep moving the slides. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I would tell, it's very sensitive, so I'm going to back it up here. That's the only thing. I told Rick, you got to be really careful when you're getting the pen, because if you tap it in the wrong place, it will advance your slide.
So
Let's see.
click on that one.
Just touch the pen right there.
Okay.
See, I did it too.
There we go.
There you go. It's really easy to use, and I'm borrowing Rick's stylus today. That's right. But my own, it has a finer point, so it's truly more like you're using a pen and writing if you're writing in numbers. One of my favorite things is the hotspot questions. Now, we actually have these type of questions on our exams. And the reason we do is because our national licensure exam in CLEX, they have all kinds of different questions. And this is one of them. Because they want to make sure that they know what 10 milliliters is. They may work the problem right, but they may not be able to pick it out on the medicine cup or the syringe. So I can enlarge this. And this time I'm going to pick kind of a highlighter, if you will. And I'm going to ask Jessica to shade in what 10 milliliters would be on the cup. So this way, they can see it and they can practice it before they see it on the dosage calculation exam. Same thing with the syringe. Once again, I'm able to enlarge it so that when I pass it to them, they can see the numbers better. Okay? And I can go get an arrow, because this is a little finer, and ask them to show me where 4 milliliters is. Draw an arrow. Okay? And then sometimes they get these two syringes really confused. One is a tuberculin syringe on top that we use to draw up really small amounts of medication, less than a milliliter. The other one is an insulin syringe. Some students want to try to use an insulin syringe, a tuberculin syringe sometimes to draw up insulin, and you can't do that. Okay, so we want to make sure they know the difference, so I might ask them to circle the insulin syringe. Yes, sir.
Can you highlight with an opacity to show the numbers and the gradients through the highlighting?
Yes, sir. So actually, I'm going to show you that on the I'll show you that on the next insulin syringe. So they could circle the insulin syringe, and then advance to the next slide. And we do have a syringe here, so I'm going to go ahead and enlarge it, and I'm going to go get the Sharpie, and I could ask them to shade 40 units of insulin, and so I'm going to take it right there. Oops, it didn't. So that would be 40 units of insulin. Is that what you were asking?
Well, I was wondering if you could read the numbers and the gradients through the highlighter, make it more transparent.
I guess, if I used a different color, I hadn't thought about that, but I don't know. Okay. Let's try that. There we go. That's up. I got a little heavy-handed.
Yellow and even lighter opacity.
Let's try that. Like a light yellow. Let's try that. Well, that's very good. So you can still see the increments. That's a very good, suggestion that they still be able to see those. Do y'all have any questions about anything?
How many students do you typically have in class where you pass this around?
We typically have anywhere from 65 to 70. So I'm a wanderer anyway. I'm not a stand behind the podium. So I wander a lot even when I'm just doing a regular PowerPoint. And, so I'm constantly walking. But we know them all. I personally don't have any problems. But I know some of the departments have been purchasing iPads for this purpose. So I know we have one. So if you didn't want to pass around your own personal iPad, I could use the one that the department has. I practiced with it the other afternoon and got frustrated because it's a little more sensitive. I just know my own. I'm used to it. So I told Rick, I just want to use mine today. I can also bring up a drug book on here. I have all of my books on here. And I can bring up the drug book and show them how to look up the appropriate information in the drug book. Let's see. Ma'am? I started either the end of last summer or beginning of the fall. I used it all last fall. Ma'am? Good results. We got really, really good feedback from the students. I used it in one smaller class also. We had an elective class. We were actually piloting a new class that's going through the process to be added as an elective now. And it was retention or help to decrease our attrition rate. So it's kind of a proactive retention class, and some of the things in it were the harder concepts like dosage calculation. And we probably had, about 30 students take that course, 25 to 30. And I used it all the time in there, and they really loved it. They said they loved being able to actually interact and use it. Any other questions? Okay, thank y'all so much. And you can just back it up. Here you go. I think did I get out of it? He was going to use my PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Here, I'm just going to put it right here. I've got it. Thank you.
Okay, let me give him the mic.
Look at this, we're going fancy today. I'm Thomas Haffey. I teach in marketing, College of Business. So, for instance, this semester I've got principles of marketing both on campus and online. So obviously, Doceri is only useful to us in primary practice on campus in the classroom. But I'm not currently using it, but I know it does have the capability. I've talked to Rick about some different ways to do like lecture capture and things like that. That you can actually, there's a little record button here at the top of the Doceri program where I could record whatever I'm going on the slide, like with Melesa's doing the annotations, she could hit record, annotate what they colored in there, and whatever is audio being picked up through the microphone of the iPad itself would be recorded. So I could then throw that, say, minute, 2 minutes segment that we might have talked about up on my Blackboard shelf for my online class. So there are some possibilities if you are teaching, say, the same class both on campus and online, say in the same semester, covering the same topics week to week, then I could take some of what I'm talking about in the classroom and put it on for the online students as well. Mainly what I'm doing with it, I'm not doing anything usually annotating in class, like nursing of course has so much to do with dosage and things like that. I'm using it more as a glorified clicker for my purposes, really. I've never really liked the idea of having a clicker in my hand. This is even larger, but somehow this just feels more natural to me. Used to a phone, used to a tablet at home anyway, kind of thing. So for instance, I'm just stealing her PowerPoint here. This is how I might be going through, you know, just like she showed you, you can run as many animations and transition as you might want. And since I also like to wander around, not necessarily to hand it off. I don't have really any problems that we're working on a day-to-day basis, so I'm not necessarily handing it off to the student, but you certainly could. And if they have their own iPad, they can actually connect into the same system, so they can be viewing, say, the slides or whatever I'm running in my Doceri. They can actually see it right there on their screen if they wanted to. They could be kind of taking notes beside themselves, because I put all of my PowerPoint slides up on Blackboard, but if they haven't downloaded them or printed them out, sometimes the student will have a laptop, and I hope in the back of the room that they're actually looking at the slides, but they could be doing the same thing with their tablet there. They have the slides in front of them, things like that. But if I'm going through, say, slides, we're talking about a topic that I have something to do on the web that I want to show them. For instance, in the spring semester, Dr. Larson and I both love the spring semester because that's when the Super Bowl is. In marketing, the Super Bowl is our Super Bowl of marketing because everybody watches it for the commercials, and every once in a while those are interrupted by some football. So that's what we like to talk about. We take a whole day out, usually both of us in our classes, to look at commercials. It's kind of one of the only majors we get to watch TV and call it learning. So if I'm talking about a topic that I maybe want to look at, and I have a stylus with me, I can wander around because I also don't want to be stuck at the front. I can wander around. Sometimes if I'm just trying to ask the students a question, I might have to go to the back of the room where they're sitting because I can't hear them. So if I have a laser, I could do that. I tend to walk back up to the front of the room and just point at whatever we're talking about, things like that. But if I just want to get closer to them, I can hear them better. I can ask them a question without having to run back up to the front of the podium just to advance slides and things like that. But if I'm sitting here in a PowerPoint presentation, I don't have to go back to the front of the room. I can get out of it. I can pull up the internet, for instance. This was Rick's presentation earlier. What I do at the beginning of each class, I usually have all my links already saved in say, a Word document on the thumb drive that I got my PowerPoints on as well. Beginning of class, before I turn on the projector, I load up every site I expect to use that day. So I might have 6, 8, 10 tabs open in Chrome or Firefox, just sitting there in the background of the computer behind the Doceri, behind PowerPoint, whatever it might be running. And they can just sit there, assuming your computer is reasonably up to date, they could sit there without it having any issue. So I can be in PowerPoint, but then I can jump out of it. I can use this, and I can just have a slide open, for instance. If we're talking about the Super Bowl ads, Facebook this year was looking at definitely packaging their own ad sales to compete with Google's AdWords, essentially. And if you liked anything about the Super Bowl, you mentioned the teams, you mentioned big game, you mentioned throwing a party at the right time of year, that kind of thing. Facebook was throwing you and your profile into a pool, whether you knew it or not, to sell to their advertisers, okay? Around the big game, around Super Bowl, around Super Bowl parties, about buying a bunch of wings for this Sunday, whatever it might be. Anything that was mentioned there, they were throwing you into a pool so that they could sell bigger advertising pools. So this was one of those articles, and as you look at it, it's kind of useless because we're looking at the top of a website, we're looking at some of even the headline, we don't have anything there. I tend to, if it's something I'm going to go through a lot, I might still go back to the podium, to the computer, and use the mouse. But I've talked to Rick about the ways that you can use Doceri a little bit better. We're all used to the idea on the side of a web page. We've got the little scroll wheel, the progress bar here. This is nearly impossible to use in-app. And that's all I've ever really tried, and I give up and just run back in the moment. Because it's just so tiny, just like you're talking about the fineness of your tip of the stylus trying to mark something. I can try, especially with a stylus, I can get to it. I'm trying to touch just this bottom of this arrow over here, and every once in a while I can get it right. But Doceri actually has controls up in its app environment itself that I can hit, and it works the same way. So it's a much simpler way that I can actually scroll through a web page, through a research paper we might be looking at, things like that. So Facebook's creating its own Super Bowl audience, and we're going to scroll down and keep looking, and we can see what they're doing with it and all of that. So we can look at articles, we can look at websites. If I want to scroll through and talk about web design and internet marketing, we can look at the top of a page. We can look at where the ads are on a page if we're talking about sales. You go all the way to the bottom, you can see where the comments are. This is where you don't go in live in class. Here there be monsters. You don't ever know what's going to be live written in some comments on an article. If you haven't screened videos before, don't let YouTube auto-load the next video. You never know what's going to come up. But I could be talking about this article, and I can click right back, go back into PowerPoint, we keep talking, we go through the next transitions, the next slides. Then I've got another topic, so I'm just going to get back out of the PowerPoint, come back over here. Here's the Super Bowl ads. YouTube puts up most, for some reason they don't always put them all up, but most of the Super Bowl advertisements each year, they throw them up in what's called YouTube Ad Blitz. And for the next week or so after the game, they let people vote on their favorites. So this year, it was the Nissan with Dad commercial was the #1 voted on ad within YouTube's environment. So I can take that ad right here, and assuming the computer has speakers hooked up to it and all of that, we can go ahead and live play a video in there. See, don't worry about it, we're not going to watch the whole thing, but that's the idea. I can play it live in there. I can find the right button, make it full screen from in the app, let them play the video, and this is a very dark commercial, so it's hard to just see on this system, but play the ad in there, pause it, stop it, rewind it, all of that good stuff. Get back out of there. Back out of full screen, pause it, talk about whatever we want to talk about, go right back to my PowerPoint slides. All where I can be in the middle of the room talking to the students about it. For instance, with YouTube commercials, I'll have a few pulled out that I specifically want to look at because we're talking about a topic. What's the appeal of the ad, or who's their target audience, things like that. But then I'm going to let the students give me suggestions, so I might walk up to you and ask, what was a commercial you remember? And then we'll scroll through the list back in the Ad Blitz section, things like that. Try and look through different things. I will say that one of the biggest limitations within this is the idea of typing. If I want to search in YouTube, I can pull this up. It has, if you can see it, make it a little bit bigger. It has a keyboard. You're used to the idea of this little keyboard on your iPad or on your iPhone or whatever it might be. It's just cumbersome, which is the main reason that I load all my slides beforehand. If I just need to type real quick, one quick search term, I want to type in Nissan here in YouTube, that's relatively easy. But if it's something I'm going to type in a long web address, we're going to do a big search term, something like that, I'm still going to go back to the podium just because it's going to be simpler in the long run to be able to type faster, more accurately. But you can do it. It's just something I tend to not do unless it's something short. If we're typing in census codes, I'll type in 39759 or whatever it might be we're looking at, because that's something quick enough. But if I'm going to type it in a number of times, I'm still going to run back to the podium, use the mouse and the keyboard. If there's a lot of things I need to precisely click on, things like that, I might still go back to the podium. But in general, I like it because I'm not tethered. I like to be able to walk around, run whatever transitions I want. I've put in a few more animations or transitions or question opportunities in class because I can be out there actually asking them the question right now rather than having to go back to the front of the podium. Like I said, I just don't like the clicker, just having to keep up with it, so that's why it never really worked out for me. That's one of the biggest things. I'm doing transitions and things like that, just like she mentioned. Every once in a while we're pulling up a whiteboard app. You did a lot with the keyboard, not with the keyboard, with the stylus writing on dosage and things. But you can actually turn this into different environments as well, and I'll do that every once in a while. We've got whiteboards or chalkboards in each room, of course, but if we want to do it in-app, I've got a whiteboard all of a sudden. I've got a black chalkboard. I've got a green chalkboard, not that you can tell the difference there. If you're in math or something, we've got graphing paper available in the app right there. So there's different options, again, for annotating, from taking notes, for showing question opportunities, things like that. But that's kind of some of the things that I've been using it for. Just mainly as making it a little bit more interactive, being able to make the transitions a little bit cleaner live for the students, that I can pull up a website that we're talking about, or a video, a commercial, things like that, without having to be tethered, where I can go out and see them. Any questions from me right now? I've got to run. I've got an 11 o'clock class to run over to right now. Yes?
Have you ever used the capture function?
I haven't done it much, but mainly because my iPad is so full. It is going to live save to your hard drive built into your iPad at the time.
What the microphone is, especially if you're like, I know you wave your hands a lot.
They've got a pretty good microphone. I mean, Apple put a pretty good mic in here. So
even if you sort of move it in and out, isn't like you had that microphone and you were moving it.
yeah, this is going to operate definitely a lot different. But you have to think, they built it with the idea of anybody's using it for FaceTime, for instance, you know, as well as you can expect. And if I was consciously trying to do that, I might make it a little bit more. But, you know, that's just kind of the natural, just moving around. It doesn't make a lot of difference. But it's definitely still going to be completely audible, yes. But it may or may not. You go really fast, you might get some wind noise. I don't know. I'm not going to wave around too much. It's Rick's iPad. True. I think I'm good. Thank you.
And then it would project it up on the screen. And they would start laughing, it would get their attention. So, that's just kind of a fun thing.
I know you gotta get to class.
Thank you.
See if I can get this on the skirt. Do you have a stylus somewhere? How am I advancing this?
Just usually.
That one. Okay. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit more from administrative side. What is required to use Doceri, some of the limitations, some of the advantages. First of all, it's a free iPad app. So for your instructors that have iPads, it's no cost to the instructor. It's also no cost to the student if you want to allow the multi-user functionality within the classroom. The CPU control software, which would be what you would put on the computer inside the classroom, runs about $30 per license. Now, there is volume licensing available. It drops the price a little bit. I think, Rick, it's in the 25, 27 range. It drops it a little bit. It's not a lot. But if you're outfitting a building, for example, you can get volume licensing. With Apple TV and Air Server, you can mirror your iPad to your projection system, and then no computer is necessary. The reason this is important to me is because I'm looking at a building that has classrooms with aging technology, meaning some of the smart rooms that were put in Renault were installed before I came on campus, and I've been on MUW's campus since about 2006. So from my standpoint, looking at budgets, needing to update classrooms, I need to look at cheaper solutions but not lose the functionality in the classroom. This is definitely something I'm looking at, because if we could put LCD monitors in Apple TVs, you can get a large LCD monitor for a couple of $100s. Apple TV is what, $150? It's $100. I think it's about $100. And then an iPad, and I've got a full-scale smart classroom for about $1,000. So when you're looking at it from that standpoint, from the dollars and cents, you can get Technology up to speed in some of your classrooms where you may not have the technology for not a lot of money. A few of the other things about it. From the faculty perspective, you've heard from Thomas and Melissa both, it's very easy to use. You download the app and you go. When they walk into a classroom with their iPad, if they're needing to connect to a classroom computer, there's a QR code where you just go, snap the QR code, and your iPad is automatically connected to the classroom computer. It's that simple. Same thing for your students. If you're going to allow the multi-user feature, they take a picture of the QR code, they're ready to go. What I like about that is my faculty member with their own iPad can walk into any of my classrooms and up and running without having to call in somebody for tech support. So if they're teaching in, say, Renault 310 and they're moving to 312, maybe on the second floor, there's no additional setup involved. You just walk in, take a snap, you're ready to rock and roll. The interface is very intuitive. If I handed this to any of you, you could use it starting now. It is very intuitive. You also can use your own device. Melissa made this comment. She likes to use her own iPad. I'm that way. I want to use my own iPad. I don't want to use somebody else's because I know where all my stuff is. I don't like getting somebody else's iPad and having to hunt for icons. It makes me crazy. And with being able to use your own device, you have everything loaded that you know you're going to need. Something else, the ability to easily upload lectures in YouTube. Now, we've mentioned the idea that you can do lecture capture with the device. For example, in Thomas's case, oftentimes he's teaching two sections of the same class. One face-to-face, one online. So he could lecture capture and in 2 clicks have his video up to YouTube of his lecture capture. It is that easy to use. The reason I like that is because I don't have to worry about a faculty member having to be trained on how to put a file up to YouTube. That's literally, you click a button and you click export to YouTube. That's all there is to it if you already have a YouTube account. The ability to annotate as you go. As you're doing your presentation, you can mark on your presentation. When I was first looking at this, I immediately thought of like the math faculty, where you could work out a problem, click record, upload it to Blackboard, and then your student sees that algebra problem worked with your voice walking them through it. Same thing with math stats or with business stats. Walk them through it, upload. For homework help, that is invaluable. If you've got somebody that's trying to, especially in an online class, that you're trying to walk them through how to work a problem, you could quickly record it, upload it to YouTube, and send them the link. The ability to quickly send lectures to students, again, like I was just saying, annotate, 2 clicks, and it's in YouTube and it's ready to go. And also the ability to increase student interaction with the content. Now, with what you're doing with the dosage calculations, that's ideal. Thinking about some of our classes over in business, especially I think business stats, you could hand off the iPad, they could work, and you get that interaction with the student. Okay? Thing I like about it, it's a low cost solution. Now, back to what I said, you're $30 for the CPU app. If you want to go the Apple TV Air Server route, it reduces the cost even further, meaning you wouldn't have to have an LCD projector in the classroom. With Apple TV and an LCD monitor, or if you had a small conference room, maybe where you had a seminar class with just some space for like 8 to 10 students. I know we have one in our building that we mainly use for faculty meetings, but it's another way to outfit that type of room with a low-cost solution. And any questions for me? I kind of ran through that very fast because I know we're running close on time.
Is there a maximum size
I'm not sure. Do you know there's a slide limit?
Slide limit means size? No, I mean your computer is basically, you're just looking
Your
at
limitation.
on your iPad, so there's no limitations to slide size.
Now, if you're recording a lecture, for example, you are going to be somewhat limited on that for what it will hold. You know, Thomas made the comment that his iPad's kind of full, so he's not experimented a whole lot with lecture capture. Of course, I know it's because his kids play with his iPad and they kind of fill it up with photos. But with that being said, if your iPad's full and you don't have enough room to save the file, that's a problem. But otherwise, you're running off of your PC, and that's for the lecture capture piece because it live saves on your device before you can export it. And you're limited by, of course, YouTube has limitations on how long your videos can be. But if you record in snippets, then it's not as big a deal. Any other questions?
Which means you can capture it and
Yes.
then do the Hangouts.
Yeah. Yep. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned, when the multi-user mode, because like I said, you can turn on multi-user where your students can take the picture of the QR code and work on their iPad. This is a limitation in my book. There's no way to turn that off. Meaning, if you've allowed them access to it, they can kind of hijack your presentation. Which is why I think most of the members that have been playing with it have been a little hesitant to allow the multi-user, because you can have somebody doodling in the middle of your presentation. So that could be an issue. So most of the faculty that have been doing the interactive with the student have just been passing their iPad because of that, because they can hijack your presentation and start. Because I did that to Rick one day, not realizing that was the case. He came to talk to our department, and I started doodling on my iPad, and I had smiley faces and all kinds of fun things. And there was really nothing he could do about it. And of course, with me, I'm kind of a joker anyway. That just made it fun. I doodled through his whole presentation. But it kind of brought home the fact that this might not always be a good idea to allow the multi-user. And it's limited to, is it 10? No, it's more than that with the multi-user. There is some limitations with the multi-user. The bandwidth is a limitation. So there is some limitation there. And I mean, it's Wi-Fi, so it is limited by bandwidth. Because I know some buildings have issues with it and some don't. I think Martin every now and then has some issues with it. We do sometimes in Renault. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to give you back your toys.
Great. I say good.